You're listening to Art Affairs, episode number 13. Today I'll be talking to Susannah Kelly. Alright, so my name's Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. If this is your first time listening, Art Affairs is meant to give you a look at and into the new contemporary art community, featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, shining a spotlight on the human side of the wonderful work they do. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes, at artaffairs.podcast.com, and you can check out new episodes on all your favorite podcast platforms. Of course, if you like what I'm doing here, be sure to subscribe, and you can always connect with the show on Instagram and Facebook at Art Affairs Podcast. On Twitter, it's at art_affairs. All right, so today's guest is artist and gallerist Susannah Kelly. Going into this, I definitely knew Susannah more for the amazing work that she and her husband/business partner Neil do through their galleries, Antler and Talon. Being such a big fan of nature-themed art in general, and having followed many of the artists that they regularly feature, Antler and Talon hit my personal radar quite a while ago. And what's interesting about both of them is that in addition to running two incredible galleries, they're also artists in their own right, and regularly produce work for both solo exhibitions and group shows. So I was eager to have Susannah on to talk about both aspects of her career. We talk about her early life growing up in Southern California, moving up to Oregon and starting Antler with Neil, her own artistic themes and processes, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Susannah Kelly. Susannah, welcome to the show. It's wonderful to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right, great. So from what I understand, you grew up in Southern California.
I did.
What was that area like? Was it like LA, San Diego, Southern California, or was it more of like a small town?
No, it's Santa Barbara, California. I love growing up there. It's fantastically beautiful, and I love nature, as you could probably tell from the curation of our gallery. And so I spent a lot of time hiking and down at the beach, and in some ways I miss the landscape down there a lot, but I really love it here in Oregon.
Awesome. What was family life like? I understand you have a sister. Was she like the only sibling you grew up with?
No, I had two sisters. One of them's my twin.
Okay.
And we're all very close. We come from a very close family, a very creative family. All my family except for me are musicians. I have a real nice, close relationship with my family. So it was just nice.
So were your parents doing something creative as well?
Yes, yeah. My parents are both musicians. So they met down in Los Angeles doing music and then moved up to Santa Barbara, which is where my mom was originally from, and continue still to now make music even after they're retired. My dad worked as the sound recording engineer out at UCSB for like 30 years, and my mom is a singer.
Okay. And so why did you not get into music, and how did you end up creating art instead?
No talent. 10 years of piano lessons will tell you no talent. As much as my dad is a really amazing piano player, and unfortunately that did not pass to this daughter. My sister Liz is an incredible piano player, and she can kind of pick anything up, and my twin sister Sheila plays the banjo. But I wish I had it. I just don't. And I was always more interested in art. So, and my parents are very supportive of that. They gave up the dream of the family band a long time ago, I think.
So how did you first get interested in art and diverge from that path a little bit?
Well, my mom always had incredibly creative games for us to play. Very, like, she wanted to stimulate our creativity as much as possible. And so art was just a huge part of my upbringing. And I was lucky enough to have a lot of teachers in school who encouraged that. I didn't really have any of the kind of more conservative idea of it's not a real job or you can't do that when you grow up. So I was very lucky in that regard.
So was that like when somebody asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Was it artist? Was that always the case?
When I was a kid, my mom asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up, and I was so panicked because I didn't know what I wanted to be. So I just said, I want to be a teacher because it was really the only profession I had come into contact with. And she was so perceptive. She said, do you want to be a teacher because you think that's like what you do when you grow up? Like you can't think. And I was just panicked about being an adult. I didn't know kind of how you made the whole thing work. And she helped me to realize that I could do anything when I grew up. And, art kind of was just ever present in my life. It was something that I knew that I loved. When I majored in art in college, my parents were very supportive. And I knew and I know now that it's still a very difficult and unusual career to forge. But I feel really lucky that I had so many supportive people in my life.
So you mentioned college, and from what I understand, you went to Willamette University, which is in Salem, Oregon. So
it's Willamette, damn it.
Okay, I mispronounced something in the last show too. I'm not good with. Okay, so say that again.
Willamette. I think it should be pronounced Willamette because I think it sounds prettier, but it's pronounced Willamette. Okay,
I apologize. No. That's in Salem, right? And was that the point where you moved up to Oregon, or were you already living there?
No, I moved up here for college. And now at this point I've been here for about 15 years. And yeah, I went to Willamette University, which is an unusual place to major in art, I think.
What drew you up there? What attracted you to that school?
Oh, well, when I was a kid, we used to come up here during the summer for vacation to come visit my mom's friend Ron, who lives out in the middle of nowhere. So I had a very positive association with Oregon. I think I even growing up in Santa Barbara, I knew I'd really never be able to afford to live there. Unfortunately, by the time I was growing up, it was too expensive. And so I kind of had always had a very positive association with Oregon. Oregon summers, I think, are the best summers. So I was excited to come up here to go to school.
Awesome. And you mentioned majoring in art. What was your focus?
My focus was drawing and oil painting. I don't really do oil painting anymore, although I was thinking about trying to get back into it. My thesis was big, messy, like martyred saint oils, which is really far away from what I do now. But I think the work you make when you're young is just, you can't look at it anymore.
It's a learning experience, right? Do you feel that experience was rewarding for you? Do you feel that it helped you sort of grow in the ways that you needed to?
Yeah, I think that, I am really grateful that I got to go to school for art and spend dedicated time just drawing and painting because, everyone when you're in school says, oh, just you wait. When you get out into the real world, you're not going to have this time to do this. And it's really not until you get here that you know how true that is. I really value that time of just being able to be so intensely focused on just your own creative process without all of the scary hassles of regular life intruding on it.
No, for sure. And so after you finished school, what sort of work did you do starting out? Did you already have an idea of what you wanted to do as far as like career goes?
I graduated smack dab into the last recession. So I must have sent out about 100 job resumes and I didn't get a response to maybe 98 of them. It was a very scary time to graduate. When I first graduated, I moved down to Santa Barbara to house sit for my parents. And I had this really killer job at a native plant nursery. And when I look back sometimes, I'm like, whoa, why did you leave that? Because you're never going to get another job like that in the recession. But I had a boyfriend at the time up here in Oregon. And so as soon as my parents came home, I came back here. And oh my God, it had such high rates of unemployment. When I actually think about the logics of that decision, I'm like, what were you thinking? But I'm so glad I did because Neil and I met and we were able to start the gallery while we were both working other not so fun jobs in this weird little space. And we were able to do that, I think, because of the recession, because we were able to rent this weird space for like $200 a month. And like, so, in a weird way, it came around, but it was a very strange time to graduate college for sure.
That's crazy. So at what point did you move to Portland?
I moved to Portland immediately after I graduated.
Okay. And why Portland? Is that just like the natural place where people go in Oregon, or like?
I think I had spent time here when I was in school, and I really liked the vibe of the city. It's a very art-focused city. A lot of, and not as much anymore, but you can still find them really strange little spaces that people make work. And I felt like if we could make something, I'm so used to talking that way because I grew up with a twin, and now I co-own a space. So everything is we and our. I almost never say me and mine. But I felt like I could maybe find a way to fit into that.
And at what point did you meet Neil?
I met Neil when I was working at a tea house on the same street where the gallery now is. And he came in, and we just got to, he had just moved there. He had just moved from England, and we got to discussing artwork. And I was trying to, again, this was a very difficult time to get a job anywhere, but I was trying to write down different animation studios in town or creative places where I thought he might be able to look for a job. And we just got to talking and haven't stopped talking to each other since.
So in 2011/2012, you decided you wanted to start a gallery, right? You opened your doors in January of 2012. Tell me how that all first started. How did you get the idea to start a gallery?
Well, I was volunteering on a board called Art on Alberta, which was the neighborhood that I was working and living in. And we facilitated this really cool little gallery that was in an old trailer that we had retrofitted to have like wooden floors and gallery walls, and we drag it all around the city and have different art exhibits. And Neil and I were both at the time working for Salt and Straw Ice Cream. Neil was their very first employee. That's a big ice cream store up here. And we watched Kim, who's the owner of that business, start that business and grow that business. And it kind of made us feel like if we wanted to start something, now might be a good time to do it, because we had this incredible resource in Kim to ask her questions about how to do things. And so one day when we were doing a volunteer event, we were in Alberta Main Street, which is our Main Street organization, and they had a little corner office that was like a little window box for rent for $200 a month. And so we asked Sarah Wittenberg, who was the really wonderful organizer of that organization for a long time and sadly passed away last year, if we could rent that space. And my dad came up to Oregon and built us walls to make it so that we could hang artwork on there instead of the cubicle walls. And we were like this little window box gallery that was open on the weekends. If we had 5 people in there, it looked like it was a crazy opening when we would do our openings on last Thursday.
That's amazing. And so, I mean, that takes a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. Do you have any like experience with that sort of business management, or was that something that was all brand new to you?
That was completely brand new. The idea, even when I would see people as a kid or as a young adult, I would see people opening businesses. I would be like, how are you brave enough to do that? I think I felt like we could take it on because it was so manageable at the time. It wasn't a huge investment, and I felt like we could take things one step at a time. And really, that's what we've been doing since we opened. My mom has sent me articles that I have read that say, oh, if you're going to open a business, start really small and grow it. And we accidentally did that. And I feel really grateful that we did, but it was nothing that I planned.
Yeah, that's incredible. So it's located in the Alberta Arts District of Portland, right? And what is that area like? Are there a lot of creative spaces around there?
Yeah, it's a fabulous area of town. It's my favorite area of Portland. I kind of landed there and never left. But it's a very arty district. A lot of small businesses, and I love main streets like that. I think it's really difficult to keep the sort of big box stores away. And like I said, I mentioned Sarah Wittenberg earlier, who ran Alberta Main Street, but she really fought to keep small businesses on that street with a specific focus on women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. And it's a wonderful community to be a part of.
That's awesome. And as the Antler name would suggest, the gallery has a strong focus on nature. Why was that such an important theme to you? I believe you said earlier that you always loved nature growing up as a kid. Is that why you sort of wanted to build the gallery around that idea?
In a funny way, we kind of fell into that too. When Neil and I first met and we were sharing our favorite artists, they were so disparate. I thought, we are not going to have the same taste at all. We don't have any art that we love in common. If we ever live together, we're going to have to live on separate sides of a studio apartment and decorate them completely differently. And we really found that where we have a kind of connection is with nature-based work. We both love nature, and we both really are fascinated by the way that it has infiltrated the new contemporary movement. And so it's been a really exciting theme to explore.
Yeah, and seems like there's a lot of nature-based focused artists in the Portland area. So I'm curious, like, what is it about Portland that draws that sort of art, like, aesthetic?
I think if you live up here and you like living up here, then you love the forest. You can go, 15 minutes outside of town, or even right in town. We've got Forest Park, but you can go 15 minutes outside of town and be right in the Columbia River Gorge, which is where a lot of people go on the weekends to hike. And actually very recently had to be shut down because of this whole pandemic, because too many people were going out there on the weekends because we all love it so much. But I just think it's just a part of life up here. I think you really see it if we ever do like co-curated shows, like we do a lot with Paradigm Gallery or Think Space or Spoke. You see the themes from other cities come into your city.
Yeah.
There may be more urban themes or things like that, but that's part of what's so fun about doing those shows is that it brings a totally different aesthetic in.
Yeah, that's amazing. And one of the partnerships that you guys have had since the very beginning, I believe, is with the Audubon Society of Portland. And you have the yearly charity exhibition Brink and Ascent for Talon that benefits them. How did that relationship first get started?
That's a good question. I think it got started because Neil and I had been open one full year in our teeny tiny space, and we were so excited and thankful that the community had been so supportive of our idea that we wanted to do something to say thank you to Portland. And so we were looking for charities that might kind of fit in with the mission of our gallery. And we both loved the Audubon Society. It was one of our first dates, going up to the Audubon Society and walking around in the trails there. And so it felt like a really natural fit.
And one of the things that I really love about that show is how not only does it benefit the cause of the charity in the form of proceeds, but also the pieces themselves are meant to sort of raise awareness and draw attention to at-risk species, right? What do you hope patrons take away from these shows? Is that part of the experience you're trying to craft?
Yeah, absolutely. It's now we have both spaces. We have Talent Gallery as well. In Talon, we have a show that's all endangered and extinct birds. And in Antler, it's endangered and extinct species. It's kind of just a broader theme. But yeah, it's, so many of the artists that we work with, climate change is a huge theme in their work. And really a lot of the shows that we do kind of inadvertently do the same thing as what we're trying to more directly do with this show, which is just raise awareness about our sort of dwindling climate. It's a little depressing, but they're beautiful pieces.
No, for sure. And it's important to get people aware of these things. I mean, otherwise it's never going to get any better, You mentioned your relationship with Paradigm based out of Philly. And I believe that all started in 2016 with the Growth Decay show, which is sort of a different approach to collaborative shows. I find interesting, where you guys have sort of agreed upon a theme that then you take and open your own shows at your own galleries, and the artists will then create a piece for each show representing those themes. It's a very interesting thing. So how did that relationship with Paradigm first start?
We met the folks from Paradigm. You know what? Actually, we met Sarah from Paradigm when we had a show with Caitlin McCormick, who's a Philadelphia-based artist. And Sarah came out with her for her show, and we all got along like a house on fire. And then we met Jason when we did the LA Art Show in, I believe, 2015. And our galleries started in sort of similar ways. We're all sort of similar ages, and we were kind of excited about the possibility of working together. So we all kind of put our heads together and started talking about what that might look like. But yeah, the folks from Paradigm are awesome. It's really wonderful to have that relationship with another gallery because, you know, there are things that come up that I could never expect in this business. And it's really wonderful to be able to call Sarah and say, what do you do when this happens?
And you had another show in 2018. So it seems like every 2 years or so. Does that mean you'll have another one with them this year?
We were going to, but it fell through a little bit just kind of based on just sort of the changing climate at the moment. But we will probably come back next year and do something together.
Okay, very cool. And are there other galleries that you'd like to build out similar relationships with or kind of grow similar bonds with?
Yeah, absolutely. We were lucky enough to do a collaborative show with ThinkSpace last year at Antler, and we're hoping to plan another one of those for maybe later this year, 2021. We've done a few little gallery trades with Spoke Art, and if everything gets back to normal here in this big old world of ours, we'll be doing a spotlight show at their New York space. So, you know, it's really wonderful to be able to collaborate with these businesses and these galleries. I think that, you know, a rising tide rises all ships. I can't remember what that saying is.
Well, you got it right. Absolutely.
we all do better when things are going well for each other. And I like that communal aspect. I want to see everyone do well. And I think they want the same for us. So it's a really, I think, special part of this gallery scene.
Amazing. Yeah. And it's really great and sort of refreshing to see galleries recognize that and everybody help build each other up, you know, because years ago it didn't seem to be the case as much as it is now. So it's definitely a welcome change. So let's talk a little bit about how Talon got started. So in 2017, after 5 years of Antler being opened, you guys launched the second gallery in Portland called Talon. What made you want to create a whole new space?
Well, as we mentioned before, Antler is very nature focused. And there were a lot of artists that we were seeing that were maybe they had a little bit more illustration, kind of narrative, figurative work. And we thought, well, that doesn't quite fit in with what we've built for Antler. But if we open another space, we can kind of change the focus a little bit. Of course, the nature-based themes can't help but infiltrate both spaces, but it does give us a little bit more room in our curation. Initially, we thought, and we'll open in a different part of town. We opened down on Division, but it turned out that because so much of our audience is online, we would have people come into town and say, well, where's your other space? And I would say, well, hop in your car for 20 minutes and you can go find out. But about a year and a half ago, our landlady up on Alberta Street, who's been really wonderful in helping us stay there, let us know that the space next door to Antler was becoming available. And we were able to move into a space 3 times our space down on Division. We said to her, we're like, we probably can't afford that. And she said, just tell me what you're paying down on Division and I'll just match that, which was, it's not a story you hear very often anywhere, but certainly not in Portland. And we feel just so lucky that we're working with someone like that. And the coolest part is that the 2 spaces are joined by a back patio. So you can go through to both of them when you visit.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. And it's set up for nice sort of kind of coordinated events. Is that something that you've now been able to do, is more coordination between the 2 galleries since they are next to each other?
Yeah, they both have the same opening night. And like we said with the Audubon show, it's a show that goes across both spaces. And we were talking about earlier, kind of doing collaborative shows. It certainly opens it up to do kind of bigger projects with other people. So I feel like we're finally kind of into the swing and going strong with having both galleries next to each other. When you move a space, like there is just like an effect that ripples through the next few months that it takes a little while to get back on top of. But I think we're feeling very at home there now. With
them being right next to each other, do you find that it's difficult to still establish that sort of distinction between the 2 since they are supposed to be separate identities?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, Neil and I really can't stay away from nature-based curation, so there's that definitely comes into Talon. I think a little bit more than we intended, but I also think it's good to not keep too tight a rein on things, because sometimes when you're open to things changing, a little bit more than you thought they would, you get something even better. So I'm very happy with both of the shows that we have coming, and both of the shows that are in the galleries right now are really fabulous.
Awesome. Awesome. So the art community there in Portland seems pretty rich, at least from an outsider perspective. And obviously, you and Neil and the galleries have become a big part of that community. Do you feel that the community there is pretty healthy and active?
Yeah, it's a really wonderful community to be a part of, kind of similar to the gallery, the online sort of gallery community that I was talking about earlier. People here want to see each other do well. They want to help each other. They want to share resources. And that's really wonderful to not have that kind of, if I get mine, no one else can have it attitude. And it's very friendly. It's a very friendly, welcoming community here, and it just keeps growing.
Do you feel that that has changed or is changing over time as like cost of living goes up and some of the Portland atmosphere transforms and the community's changed? Do you feel that that is affecting that community in some way?
Yes, of course. It's such a sad hazard of living in any populated area, is that rents keep climbing, and we've had to say goodbye to a few people who had lived here for a long time and just couldn't make that work anymore. It's why we're so grateful for our landlady up on Alberta Street, because she's a big part of why we're still able to stay. I certainly wish that the world was a little bit more kind in that way, but everyone keeps kind of plodding along and trying to do our best and look out for each other.
Very cool. Let's swing back around to your own artwork for a bit. So your last show called Places, which was at Talon, while nature was incorporated into the works, that hasn't really been a primary focus of your work in general, like throughout your career. And I'm not even sure that it was really the primary focus of Places. I feel like almost the work was more about the impact that we as filthy humans have, so sort of what we leave behind, and nature adapts to those things. That's sort of my impression of it, looking at it as a whole. Can you talk a bit about the theme for that show and where it came from?
I really love that interpretation because it's not where I was coming from, but I that's one of my favorite parts about artwork, is just hearing how everybody interprets it. Someone on the radio gave a different take on a Margaret Atwood book recently, and it's like everything clicked into place in my head. I was like, oh my gosh, how have I not thought of that before? But no, as I mentioned earlier, that's the our instead of me, mine. When I was a kid, I used to come up to Oregon every summer and visit my mom's friend Ron, who lives out in the middle of nowhere. And this was sort of a nostalgia series for me of coming out here into rural Oregon and seeing all these sort of overgrown trailers and things like that. So for me, it's I'm sure a lot of people are feeling this way, but the world has been pretty chaotic recently, and this was sort of just a nostalgia trip for me of kind of reminding myself of something nice.
Oh, very cool. Like a memory lane almost.
Yeah, exactly. But your interpretation is not wrong at all. Because that is a big part of it. We do leave a lot of mess behind.
And, your work generally, just in earlier parts of your career, seems to deal a lot with sort of the relationships that humans have with their surroundings, and with themselves. Focusing a lot more on like the human form than what this recent body of work has had. Where do you think your interest in that subject matter originated?
That's a good question. I think probably, I guess I don't know why that started. It's still something that I do and draw, and I'm very interested in people and the different relationships that they have to each other. We're all so different, and we all have such different interpretations of the world. People just interest me, but I don't know why I like drawing them.
And when working on a series, sort of like Places or any of the solo shows that you've done, do you typically establish an overarching theme up front and then work within those boundaries, or do you sort of let the work organically define the theme and then come back after the fact and establish that?
For this last show, I had a definite idea that I wanted to kind of have that nostalgia trip. That was something that that I set out and mapped out from the beginning. I usually do try to put things together and work in a cohesive way when I'm working on a body of work. Although sometimes a spanner gets thrown in the works, like the show I did a couple of years ago. We had someone drop out and I had a couple pieces that I was already working on. And Neil said, do you think that you can put more together and we can round out this show? So I didn't get to quite finish the exact thing that I was working on, but I'm going to come back to it. But yeah, I think I do tend to sort of work in bodies of work and then kind of put them away when I'm done with them.
And as far as the mediums that you work in go, you mentioned early on you did a lot of oil painting in school, but obviously since then you've shifted over to mostly graphite, whether it be pencil or like powdered graphite. Can you tell me what it is about graphite, like as a medium that you like so much?
You can erase it. Who doesn't love that? No, when I used to do oil painting, I always liked my drawings more than my paintings. And so I think at some point I saw, people working in graphite as a finished medium, and that kind of gave me the freedom to say, I think I like this better.
So is it just that it came more natural to you?
I guess so. Good questions. I don't know if it's that it came more naturally or I kind of like that you can draw anywhere. You can bring a sketchbook and a pencil anywhere in the world and make art. And I think that's part of what I like about it is that I can take my drawings all around the house with me when I'm making them. I can cuddle on the couch with my dog. When I throw out my back, as I inevitably do, I can lay in bed and draw.
And you mentioned maybe trying to get back into oil at some point. Is that something you'd like to do, or are there other mediums that you'd like to explore?
I do want to get back into oil. I haven't worked with it since I was in college, so it's probably more romanticized in my head than it will be actually working on a messy thing that I have to get rid of the first one I do. But yeah, I running the business, running the gallery, and trying to make work is challenging. So I kind of have to feel like I have to give myself permission to experiment a little bit without making something that's for anything. So I have a few projects in the back of my head that have probably been there since we started the gallery that I would like to get back into, but I just haven't had an opportunity. When I was a kid, Larry Iwerks is an artist in Santa Barbara, and I used to go out and do plein air painting with him, which as a kid, I loved. I mentioned that I loved being in nature, and I loved watching him paint because he would just say, oh, look over there, there's just a little bit of yellow, and he'd just be slapping stuff up, and it would just look like lines, and then he'd put just one little mark in, and everything would come together, and I was always so envious of that, and mine never looked like that, but that's another thing I'd love to get back into doing is just spending time out, sitting in a peaceful place and making artwork. It's just a different experience of doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And so what is your current process typically involved? Do you do much in the way of like preliminary sketching, like in advance?
Yes, I do. I think too much. Sometimes I look at a finished piece and then I look at like the sketch that I did beforehand and I'm like, I should have just kept working on the first one. I think I like that, especially working on something in the beginning. I like the idea that no one's going to see it. If I mess up, it's not a problem. But yeah, I do tend to do a lot of preliminary work and then put it on a formal piece of paper and start it.
And beyond preliminary sketches for like, artwork that you're putting into a show, do you do any kind of sketching in like a sketchbook, just like on a regular basis?
Yeah, when I was in school, I had this really cool big sketchbook, and it was almost like half diary, half sketchbook, and I had it as this full, complete thing. And now the sketchbooks are completely incomplete because if I draw something I like, I'll tear it out so I can like kind of collage it with something else. So at the end of it, they're like two pieces of paper in it, so they're not very fun to look through.
Do you have any kind of dedicated studio space away from your home? Or I kind of see a drafting board there in the background. Do you work from your home?
I do, yes. Neil and I are lucky to each have a studio at our house. And yeah, I have a really beautiful drawing table that was given to me when I was a kid. My dad's boss's wife sadly passed away, and his boss knew that I made artwork and gave it to my dad to give to me. And it's really beautiful. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, people being supportive me making work, things that happened like that along the way sort of, I don't know, that made me feel very special. It was very sad. But I felt like, oh, okay, I can make work, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. And so you alluded to the time issues that come naturally with owning a gallery and a business and also trying to create art. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. Considering all the hats that you wear, how do you still make time to create? And is that challenging for you?
It definitely is. Neil and I work together kind of to give each other studio time. It's why we never have shows around the same time, because if someone has a body of work that they're making, the other person takes on a little bit more to kind of give them time, because as everybody knows, this stuff just, it takes a fantastic amount of time. And so I think that we're lucky to be in a partnership where we can rely on the other person to realize that that's important.
Yeah, and as far as the business side of things go, I mean, it was all brand new to you at first. Have you come to sort of enjoy that side of things now, or is it something you feel you excel at?
I don't think I'm a natural business owner. I have learned so much, and I do enjoy it. I really enjoy running the gallery. I feel really lucky that Neil and I have been able to carve this out and keep this going. We receive a lot of really wonderful support. And yeah, I love running the business. I wish, like anyone's life, I wish I could spend more time in the studio, or, oh, I wish I could go out hiking with my sister on a weekend or something like that. But no, I love my job, and I feel really lucky that I love my job.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. How do you and Neil typically break up the work? Are there things that you feel you're better at dealing with than him, and vice versa?
Yeah, luckily we naturally kind of fell into those roles. Neil has a journalism degree, and so he's very good at, writing press releases and contacting people. I'm kind of more on the analytical side of things. I kind of take care of reconciling everything at the end of the month, or, as the tax deadline approaches, doing our taxes. But yeah, we naturally kind of just fall into different roles. We curate together. We set aside time where we sit down together, and we'll look through our submissions, and we'll look through new artists, and we'll map out the schedule together. We tend to answer emails together, which is why all of our emails are Neil and Susannah, or Susannah and Neil. We decided to start doing that at the beginning of opening the gallery, because unfortunately, most people thought it was Neil's gallery and that I was kind of helping him out. And so we decided to sort of solidify that by signing all of our emails together, which some people think is a little strange, but I kind of like it.
No, that's cool. And as far as, the strengths that you both bring, being artists, both of you, do you feel that having lived that artist perspective makes you better at being gallerists?
I think that we tend to approach things from an artist's perspective, trying to make sure that everything's fair, that everyone's happy. I think it's helpful for us to understand, all of the different feelings that go into this. Artists are so emotionally tied to their work, and I think that that's a really important thing to care about when you're going into this from the gallerist side of things.
And how do you find new artists? You mentioned sort of you do curation together. How do you discover new talent?
We find artists in a lot of different ways. We find a lot of artists through artists. Sometimes an artist will say, hey, I've got this friend, you should see their work. And that's a really organic and great way to meet people. We find a lot of artists through Instagram. That's a really fabulous tool that, it's just images on a screen and an endless scroll. We have a submissions email that we go through and look at together. And then, publications, blogs, things like that. Living in the time of social media, I think it's really easy to discover new artists, which is wonderful from a curatorial perspective.
No doubt. So let's talk a little bit about what recent events have affected, the gallery space. This is about 3 weeks before the show will actually come out. So who knows what the world's going to be like in 3 weeks? I mean, it's all moving so fast. But what is like the COVID-19 coronavirus? How has that affected you guys? I know a lot of the stuff that you normally would have is like opening shows. You're now doing virtual tours and stuff like that. How are you guys adjusting?
Well, like most places, we are on sort of a light lockdown. They have mandated that our business be closed, and so Neil and I, like many people, are working from home and just trying to make sure that our online presence is good. It's kind of flying by the seat of our pants because it's things that we hadn't done before. So trying to make everything run smoothly from a technological standpoint has been challenging, but it means that we'll be better at it. And we have received a lot of feedback from people that they're grateful to have a view of the gallery when they live in other places like Costa Rica and Spain. So, there'll be things that we continue to do after all of this is over. I think, like everybody, this is just such a scary and sad and strange time. And so just trying to kind of keep our energy up and keep showing people the incredible work that the artists are making. And it's we're just kind of taking it as it comes to us. I mean, no one has any control over this situation.
Yeah.
It's a strange time to be part of.
Are you looking at your schedule at all? Is this affecting the lineup that you had planned for this year to accommodate, or are you still sort of marching along the same schedule, but just changing the way that people view the work?
Yeah, we are changing the way that people view the work. We're still forging ahead with our schedule. We are able to be open by appointment currently. So observing social distancing, we are able to let a few people into the gallery to see the work. I know it's a difficult thing. Art is meant to be seen in person. And so we're trying to, whether it's online or whether it's meeting people at the space, trying to give people that experience.
What are some of the big shows that you have coming up this year? Anything that you're particularly excited about?
I'm really excited about our current group show at Talon. The Angels and the Architecture show is something that is new for us. And the artists just made such incredible work. It's live on our website right now. And it's I love architectural work, so it's just like really delightful to me to just have a whole show of things that I love. That I've been looking forward to that for months. It was particularly heartbreaking that opening was the first opening that we couldn't have people in the space, because I was just real excited about it.
It seems like some of the work, I was watching some of the tour, I think it was yesterday, and some of it is more three-dimensional, and some things that you would truly benefit from, like seeing in person, So it's almost heartbreaking that people are now having to do these digital kind of viewings, but at least you're able to do like tours. And I mean, I think that's at least helpful.
Yeah. And through the month we'll be, especially, I think, are you talking about the Tripper Dungan wooden sculptures at Antler? Yeah, they're really cool. Through the month we will be doing more live videos of those to help kind of people see them in the round as they're meant to be seen. And if you're in Portland, Oregon, you can always send me an email. I'll come open up.
Very cool. And so what does Susannah Kelly, the artist, have coming up this year? Anything that you can talk about? Any shows that you're working on? Or
I have oh my goodness. It's so much easier for me to talk about the gallery. It really is. I will be putting a piece in the spotlight show that we're doing in New York, assuming that everything has calmed down and we're all able to travel again. And then I have 3 small pieces that are going to go into an online exhibition with the Wow by Wow gallery, which is an online gallery. So I mean, what a time to be an online gallery. They have a show of small works that I'm contributing some pieces to. And then I have a piece that I'm working on that you can see in the background on my table right now that I'm going to do for that New York show that we have coming up in November.
Awesome. And that's with Hashimoto, right? With Ken?
Yeah. So last year, took over our Talon space for a GATS show that was just a weekend show, and we're going to do the same thing in New York in November.
Awesome. So tell people where they can find more about you and the gallery online.
Oh, sure. You can find more of my work on SusannahKellyArt.com, and you can find our galleries at TalonGallery.com and AntlerPDX.com. And then on Instagram at Talon Gallery and at AntlerPDX and at Susannah Kelly.
Awesome. So last question, and then if you've listened to the show, this is something I ask everybody. Who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
Oh, well, that will be an easy answer for me because it can only be my wonderful husband, Neil Perry.
Very cool. I would have not expected anything different. So, all right. Well, Susannah, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Susannah. It's been really fascinating to me to learn more about Susannah's journey, both as an artist and the success she's had with Neil as a gallerist. It really strikes me how Antler and Talon's trajectories from the very beginning has been incredibly organic and also seem to have benefited a great deal from having wonderful people, both directly and indirectly involved. Started almost like a low-risk experiment just to see what was possible in a small cubicle-sized space in an up-and-coming arts district, ultimately blossoming and growing into not one, but two amazing gallery spaces and a cornerstone of the Portland arts community, and even forging strong bonds with other galleries around the country, from Paradigm to ThinkSpace to Hashimoto. It really goes to show how having a strong spirit of community and of inclusiveness, as well as working hard for your artists and treating them like family, really goes a long way to making you successful as a gallery. These are the sorts of experiences that people appreciate, both artists and patrons alike. We saw that with Andrew in ThinkSpace, and hopefully I can have some folks from some of these other galleries on at some point to share their experiences as well. One other thing that I thought was pretty interesting about our discussion was something that we talked about there towards the end. Like I mentioned, this episode is being recorded 3 weeks prior to when I expect it'll come out. So I have no idea how things will be in the world by then with this frightening pandemic that we're all struggling through. Hopefully it's starting to trend in a better direction by then, knock on wood. But with art galleries being such an in-person and often social experience, I've really been interested in how they're adapting to everything, how they're changing their model and business processes to be able to still share their wonderful offerings with people who can no longer come into their physical spaces. Susannah and Neil have, like many others, found ways to incorporate more technology into the mix, creating virtual tours of their new shows at both galleries to share on their IGTV channel. I've seen other galleries doing Instagram live tours of their shows and even doing Instagram live chats with artists who are featured. It's been really interesting to see how folks have adapted to these tragic circumstances. But it'll also be interesting to see how this shapes their processes in the long term. Susannah kind of mentioned that briefly, saying how they'll probably continue to do some of these virtual tours, even after this is all over with, since it helps them reach even more people and bring their artists' wonderful work into so many more homes. As a glass is half full guy, as I try to be, I think it'll be fun to see how many of these new adaptations galleries are making become a part of their permanent operation. So thanks again to Susannah for joining me today, and thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support, especially in these frightening times when there's so much pulling your attention in all the directions. I appreciate you taking the time and bringing my show into your home to spend some time with. It definitely means a lot. And I do hope you're all staying safe and healthy out there. Feel free to shoot me an email if you have any suggestions for the show, or if there's a guest you want me to try and have on. I'd love to hear any feedback you might have for me. You can contact me through my website at artaffairespodcast.com. And like I said at the front of the show, you can go there to check out any previous episodes. You can also find the show on Instagram and Facebook at Art Affairs Podcast. And last but not least, if you're on Apple Podcasts, I'd be super grateful if you took a moment to review the show. It really helps a ton. So until next time, especially in these times, be good to yourself and be good to each other.